Okay, week one, we're looking at the structure of the double leg. So where our hands should be, where our feet should be, and where our head should be. With the double leg, the biggest understanding we need to look at is our feet. So if I enter any type of double leg with my structure, with my knees not under the individual, right? Especially if I'm going onto the knee to enter the double leg, right? I'm going to be a bit too far away from the individual. So my head is going to be over my knee, which means that I'm not going to have any power, okay, to start standing up and for the individual's hips to start leaving my body, all right? So we need to understand that this knee needs to be as deep as I can, and usually the knee is in between his legs, all right, and is in line with his head and his pelvic bone. So if I'm deep in now if I ask him to pull his legs back, all right, it's very difficult, and now I can also step up and start finishing any type of double leg. The other thing with the double leg, if Tim stands in front of me here, right, I always want to have, all right, a close circle around his waist, all right, obviously just under his bum. Okay, I don't want to come up too high because then the legs can leave my torso, all right. So I want a close circle. It does play a big factor if I don't close the circle and I cup, right, around. I can still finish the double leg and stop his leg from leaving my body, right? But because my wrist is only stopping that, it does become a little bit more difficult, and that's why we always look to get elbow deep and not wrist deep, right? If I'm elbow deep, it's harder for the individual to kick his legs back, all right? But always looking, even if I get elbow deep, to then connect to my hands is very important. So understanding where our knees need to be, okay? Understanding our hand position. So I need some type of closed structure, all right? And I don't want to have a gap in between. I can enter that in the beginning, but eventually I need to close the full circle. My head now needs to be driving as close to his torso as possible, as my head does two things with different double legs. It drives the torso to one side, or it will drive the torso straight back, all right? If my head is away from the individual, it's easy for the guy to pull a frame in with either crossface, all right? Push my head down, okay? And his hip is easy to leave my torso. So whenever I enter that double leg, I need to make sure that my ear and my head is stuck onto the individual, right? So now I have a full circle of my hands, and my head is now implementing a driving structure instead of my head being away from him, creating space, and then with that space, the individual can start with some type of defense with his upper body or lower body. Now, when do we need to get onto our knees? That's the other thing that a lot of people don't understand. It's all got to do with my opponent's head. So if now Tim is straight up, okay, he has very good posture, I'm much lower than him, I don't necessarily now have to go onto my knee, drive forward, and then enter. I can straight from here shoot and enter the legs. That's because my head is lower than his. When Tim drops his base now, his head is lower. Now obviously I can't just shoot, I have to get lower than his head, and that's when I'll need to drive my knee down and then start entering onto the leg. So it's always good to know both depending on the individual structure. And remember again, that's got to do with his head. His head is high, it's easy for me to enter low. But if his head's low, I have to make sure that my head, right, is lower than his head, which means that I might have to go onto my knee and then start entering the double leg from there, all right? So we've spoken about how my feet should be and knee should be, our hand position, our head position, and why we need to change levels at what degree, all right? Now, finishing of the double leg, all right, you always want to drive or create an angle, okay, opposite to the head. So if my head is on my right side of my body, I need to drive Tim to the left. So I can drive by pushing in an angle and keep pushing, okay? I can drive and block with my knee, okay? Or I can circle the body, all right, to the opposite side and then start driving again to the opposite side, right? So again, if Tim is in front of me, all right, so the angle I need to do is like an L, Okay, I'm stepping and I can keep stepping, or I'm stepping and I can block the knee with my knee, okay, or I can rotate. Now I can rotate either to my right, okay, or I can rotate to my left, making a circular motion. And that's super important with structure of the double leg is the finishing. You can't drive in a straight line. If you drive in a straight line, the individual's going to have some type of structure to start his defense. It's always cutting an angle, either into an L-shaped position, okay, or into a circular position, depending on your style or entry point of your double leg. As well, sometimes you can combine it depending on how your opponent is defending. So again, we've gone over structure of double leg, our knees and feet, where they need to be. Specifically, our knee needs to be under the hip position, all right? And you want to have total chest on chest or chest on hip connection as much as you can. You can't have space in between. Our hands, we want to always primarily look at a full circle connection, and we don't want to have our hands separated. We can enter separated hands, right? And then land up into a full connection, or get elbow deep instead of wrist deep. Once you're from there, our head needs to be a driving force, either with our forehead straight forward or a side of our head to the side, all right? And we can't have a separation of our head to the individual's torso. Our next thing we need to understand is our finishing positions. Our finishing positions, again, will be in an L-shaped position or circular position, and we don't want to be going in a straight line. With all of these structures put together, it doesn't matter any type of entry points or combinations that we enter. As soon as we enter the double leg, as long as we stick to these structures, we will be able to complete the double leg, get our points, or get our opponent to the ground.